Hey guys, welcome to Built on Faith Homestead, and today is Tiny House Talk Tuesday. Typically speaking, Melissa joins us on these Tiny House Talks, but she's not able to today, so it's just me. But we have talked about our topic, and today I want to talk about the future. And really what I want to focus on is what kind of future are you establishing for your children? Now, I'm a firm believer, right, that we need to take care of today and those kinds of things, and I understand all that. But this is what I'm talking about. As I spent some extra time with Leah Joe today, I really thought about what kind of world are we leaving our children. I talked yesterday in our life lessons with the animals about some of the crazy things we have in our world today and how insane those things really are. And it has really got me to thinking, what kind of world do you want your children to grow up in? Obviously, I'm a pastor, and so I have thought about it before in church context, and this is what I mean by that. I've grown up in church, spent a lot of time in church. My grandpa was a pastor, so I spent a lot of time in church, right? And I've heard it a lot, especially from the older ones, right? That'll go something like, they just don't have church services like they used to. And I'm not going to deny that fact. However, I will say I've been a part of some church services in modern times, in today's time, that have been awful good. Lots of shouting, lots of healing, lots of, all kinds of craziness, and in a good way. I have seen those things, right? And so I'm very thankful to be a part of some of those services. However, you hear some of them talk about, it's just not like the services of old. I've seen records and read records of churches having, revival for 4 weeks at a time. And today, if you go more than 3 or 4 days, boy, you're just wild and crazy. And you better not go more than about an hour and a half in the church service, or you're one of those crazy people, right? I've heard stories of people sitting outside churches, right, where they would just send the women and the children in, and they would open up the windows, and all the men had sit outside because there wasn't room for them to sit inside the church. And I've heard people say, well, it's just not like it used to be. Okay, why? Why is it not like it used to be? What are you doing to fix it? This is kind of how I've thought about it in a church context. There has been many people go before us, making that road for us to walk down, right? They've cleared the trees, right? Maybe at one point it was gravel, and then they made it asphalt, and it was smoother, and it was easier. And maybe it got so smooth and so easy that we quit maintaining the road, and we've allowed potholes to come up, and the church services now aren't as free as what they used to be. Spiritually, not as free as what they used to be maybe 50 years ago. And then the question is, how come and why, and what do we do to fix it, right? What are we doing to help that? Are we allowing people to move in the Spirit the way that they should? Or are we just trying to, in our modern day convenience lifestyle, okay guys, it's 11 to noon, and if you ain't out by noon o'clock, then you need to hurry this thing along if you're not done by noon, and get people out here because, they've got birthday parties and family gatherings and restaurants to get to. Is that why we're not as free? Or is it just because we have just, wholly just because we've drifted from the Spirit wholly and completely and just don't want nothing to do with it? Or what, right? I've heard people say before, they're just not shouting like there used to be. And then I would ask, when's the last time you shouted then? People just don't go to the altar like they used to. When's the last time you went to the altar to pray, right? Well, we just don't have revivals no more. Have you asked your church to hold revival? If you're a church, if you're a part of your church, if you are especially a member of your church, if your church has church membership, why not ask the pastor and the deacons, hey, have you guys thought about having a revival? We sure would like to have a revival. It's one thing to recognize the problem. It's a whole other thing to actually address it. Now, we raise our children the way that we raise them, taking care of animals and gardening and working hard, and we take them to a lot of church events and those kinds of things because we want that to be in their future, or at least have them to have the ability to do some of those things in the future. Maybe my children will never need to know how to gather wild edibles. However, I would rather them have that knowledge and not ever need it than to need it and not have it. What kind of future are you preparing for your children? You understand that an inheritance is a lot more than finances, right? It's work ethic. It's the way we act. It's whether or not we are loyal or honest or those kinds of things, right? And what our children pick up from us, in one sense, will be a type of inheritance to them, right? It's a lot more than your great-great-grandma's fine dishes that she got for her wedding, right? It's a lot more than that. It's what kind of future are you preparing for them? One of the things that we strive diligently on for our children, one of the huge focal points for us, is that they not be bound up by this world and to be tricked into thinking that they need to do everything everybody else is doing, right? If they see a friend of theirs wearing a certain hat and they want that hat, that's okay, but I don't want them to think they have to have that hat because their friend has it. If they just see it and they like it and they want a hat, whatever, right? But if they think they have to have it because their friend has it, then that's a different conversation. I don't want them to think that they have to be just like everybody else, right? That they can have a different style of life than what the world is teaching them and still be happy and still enjoy it, right? And maybe actually enjoy life a lot more than what some other people might, right? So, what kind of future are you preparing for your children? Do you want your children to grow up in a world where you have to worry about some man dressed like a woman going into your daughter's public bathroom area? Do you want to worry about that, or do you want to actually do something about it? Do you want your children to grow up in a world with no morals and no truth? Do you want that for your children, or are you willing to actually do something about it, change it? Are you wanting your children to grow up in a world where they are dependent fully on the government, or do you want to do something to actually change that? But see, here's the thing. If you say, I don't want those things, and I want to do something to actually change it, that means you are going to actually have to do something to change it. I have been blessed enough to talk to several married couples now, and I really enjoy spending that time talking with them. I'm not a counselor. I'm not certified in counseling, right? But I do know some scriptures, and we can sit down and talk about scripture, right? And one thing that I really stress is if we want things in our marriage to change, and we all do, we all need to improve in areas in our marriage. If we actually want that to happen, then we have to actually take the steps forward to make that happen. We have to shut off the TV. We have to not worry about our favorite Tuesday night show. We need to shut that off because we need to recognize there are things more important than the Tuesday night TV show, right? So, do you want your children to grow up in a world where your president of a nation cannot fully put together a sentence? Is that what you want? Do you want your children to grow up in a world where they are told they are crazy if they believe in creation? And you say, Justin, I can't change the whole world. Well, here's the deal. Maybe you can't by yourself. But if enough people will begin to break free from society and not... See, right now we're doing this VBS study on Moses right now down at church. And I love that story. And I love how the different ways of thinking and how Moses was used to bring the children of Israel out of bondage, out of the bondage that they were in. However, they had food, they had water, they had shelter, they had those things, but they were still in bondage. And see, I feel like most of America is really in bondage. They have food, they have water, they have shelter, most of you, right? But you are in bondage into this world, into thinking that you are worldly drunk, is what I would say, right? Which I think personally is a whole lot worse than brown bottle drunk, right? When you are drunk on the things of this world and you are bound by them, and you think that you have to have you think you have to have everything that everybody else has, and you watch YouTube and you watch Facebook and you think that because somebody else else is doing this on Facebook, now you have to do this, or your life's not as good because you're not able to do this or that or the other, without realizing the things that you do have. You are in a bondage. You are locked up, right? And I want you to be free. That's the reason why my Bible study channel is called Leaving Egypt. That's why here on Rumble, whenever you watch this, it's called Leaving Egypt, because you may be comfortable enough, right, that you've got food, water, and shelter, but you are still in bondage, and you should be free, right? And I don't mean free to lay around and do nothing all day. That's not what I mean, but I do mean that you need freedom in this life to live a life that is enjoyable, at least to you. Now, what do I mean by that? Do I mean that you don't work hard? No. I believe that I enjoy working hard. I still enjoy splitting wood with a splitting maul. I know that's crazy, but I enjoy it. I like those things. I like being able to go and cut firewood and heat my home with it. Like, I enjoy those things. I find that freeing for me. If I don't do that, we're going to get cold. So am I... can you make an argument that, well, you're in bondage, with your wood stove? I guess you could, but that depends on whether or not I'll go cut firewood. That's what that depends on, and I like that. I like the idea, and not just whether or not I'll cut firewood. It's whether or not the Lord will give me the health to cut firewood. And if He doesn't give me the health to cut firewood, I know that He will take care of it one way or the other, whatever that may be, right? And so, if you really want, I know so many people, right, all of us, we want things to be different. But are we really willing to make the sacrifices to make them different? See, I believe that everything takes sacrifice. A very general way I would say this is, if you want to have a whole lot of money, then you're going to sacrifice your time. If you want to have a whole lot of time, you're going to sacrifice finances a lot of the time. And so, you usually can't have both, right? So you have to either find a balance, or you have to figure out what you're willing to sacrifice and what it is you need to make. And so, what kind of sacrifices are you really willing to make? Because you can say you want, but if you're not willing to sacrifice for it, do you really want? I don't think so. And when I look at my children, I look at a 5-year-old little girl and a 2-year-old little girl and a little boy that's not even a year old, and I look at the world that I live in, I look at it and go, I don't want them growing up in this world. I want something different for them. Don't tell the law, but I let my daughter ride in the very back of my pickup truck. My 5-year-old, I let her ride in the very back of my pickup truck around the yard the other day. Just around the yard. We was just dropping feed off to the chickens and over to the rabbits. And she loved it. Was it dangerous? Sure, it could be. More dangerous than riding in the front, right? But she had some freedom. And she absolutely loved it. And she can't wait to do it again. I know that sounds so minuscule, but when I think back on it, right? When I was growing up, if there were too many adults, the kids rode in the back of the truck. And you know what? We loved it. It was a blast. We loved riding back there. We had some freedom. Whenever I was younger, me and my family, we would go to Silver Dollar City, right? My mom and my stepsisters and my stepdad, we'd all go to Silver Dollar City. And my mom, and we didn't have no cell phones, and they could, with some comfort, be able to say, you kids go do whatever you want, and you come back at this store at 2 o'clock, and we'll all meet back together, right? And it was okay, and it was fun, and everyone had a good time. You didn't have to worry about it. I want my children to grow up in that. Now, do I believe that they're going to grow up in that? No. I don't believe that at all. I believe it would be foolish for us as parents to do that today. Do I know that according to Bible prophecy, the world's just going to get worse before the Lord comes back? Yes, I do know that. And so I know the direction the world is going to go. But for my children, and for me, and for my family, I can make a small difference for them that starts off small now when they're children and will grow into something much bigger as they get older for them and for their life, for them to have some freedom. And once again, guys, ultimately all freedom is in the Lord. You have no freedom without the Lord. I want to give this example of making a small difference now when they're young That way it will change the trajectory of their life and put them in a completely different spot. We got that little swimming pool, right? And when we was trying to level the ground out, I just eyeballing it, right? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty close. And when I went to filling it, I'm like, it doesn't look bad. And I got it partway filled up, and I checked it, right, real scientifically with a rake handle and a thumb, right, and just went down. Yeah, it's this deep here, and I went over the other side of the pool, and yep, it's about a 1/4 inch difference over here. At about a foot deep, right, it was about a 1/4 inch difference. Now, at 2.5 foot, that 1/4 inch grew. Why? Because at the baseline, it was off just a little bit, right? And as that filled up, it made it way off at the top. For our children, if we can just change that trajectory now when they're little, it will make a big difference in their life as far as where they will land. But you gotta change it way down here, right? Now, if they're already up older and you change it now, a little change will make a big difference in their life, even if they're up older. What kind of world do you actually want for your children? What do you actually want to show them in this life? What kind of bondage do you want them to be in? Do you want them to be free? Do you want them to have risks? See, I want my children to be free enough that they're okay with dying for the right thing. I want them to be free enough that if it were that the Antichrist and his army were marching across the land and killing people for their faith, I want my children to be so free from this world that they say, you know what? I'm willing to die for this. It's okay. It's all right. I want my children to be so free that they know how to grow their own food so they can break away from the governmental systems that are in place the best that they can. I want my children to know how to raise animals. Why? So that they'll appreciate the food that's on their plate. So they'll appreciate what it is God has created, and so that they don't have to be in bondage to even the supermarkets if they don't have food. What kind of future do you want for your children? What kind of future do you want for your family? What kind of future do you want for you? And are you willing to make the sacrifices necessary to make it happen? Thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.